She had only been gone for 3 days when she returned to find strangers carrying her furniture onto the front lawn. Her husband, Ryan Mitchell, stood in the doorway beside another woman, calmly informing the watching neighbors that his wife no longer lived there. The locks had already been changed. The security code had already been erased. Paige Mitchell never argued. She simply looked at the new key in Ryan's hand, then at the house she had helped build, before quietly walking away. Ryan believed a locked door ended a marriage. He had no idea the deeds hidden in a secure file carried far more authority than any lock he could ever install. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and what your local time is. If you believe dignity speaks louder than revenge and that the truth deserves patience, consider subscribing so you won't miss the next story. Fan 2. Few people who met Paige Mitchell for the first time would have guessed how much responsibility she quietly carried. She was not the loudest person in a meeting, nor the first to offer an opinion at family gatherings. She preferred listening over speaking, reading, over assuming and documenting, over debating. Those habits had never made her particularly memorable to strangers, but they had quietly shaped every important decision of her adult life. The narrator already knew what Ryan Mitchell had failed to understand. Long before a locksmith changed a single lock, long before another woman walked confidently through the front door, and long before neighbors witnessed boxes scattered across the lawn, the foundation of the entire marriage had been built upon documents Ryan had never bothered to read. For now, however, that truth remained safely hidden. 5 years earlier, their marriage had looked almost ordinary. They lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside Charlotte, North Carolina, where tree-lined streets and carefully trimmed lawns suggested stability, even when families behind closed doors carried burdens invisible to everyone else. Ryan had recently launched a commercial construction consulting company. The business was still young, operating from a modest office with only a handful of employees. Success was uncertain, contracts came slowly, and cash flow often depended upon whether clients paid on time. During those uncertain years, Paige never complained. She had earned a respected position as a senior asset management analyst for a private real estate investment firm. Her work demanded precision more than charisma. Every day she reviewed property portfolios, examined financial disclosures, tracked investment risks, and verified ownership records before multi-million-dollar transactions could move forward. She understood something many people overlooked. Money could disappear. Promises could change. Memories could become unreliable. Documents rarely did. That belief quietly influenced every part of her personal life. She organized tax returns by year. Insurance policies were scanned and backed up. Mortgage statements were filed both digitally and on paper. Receipts, closing disclosures, warranty, documents, maintenance invoices, and correspondence, all found carefully labeled folders inside a locked filing cabinet in her home office. Ryan occasionally laughed at her system. "You keep paperwork like it's preparing for another century." Paige would smile gently. "You never know which page you'll need someday." Neither of them realized how prophetic those simple words would become. In the beginning, Ryan appreciated her discipline. She balanced household finances while he focused on building his company. When unexpected expenses appeared, Paige adjusted budgets without complaint. She postponed vacations, delayed buying a new car, and quietly redirected bonuses into emergency savings rather than luxury purchases. Ryan often received congratulations from friends for how quickly his business was growing. Few people noticed that much of its stability rested upon decisions Paige had made behind the scenes. When Ryan worried about cash shortages, Paige negotiated lower interest rates with lenders. When accounting software failed during tax season, she stayed awake nearly an entire weekend, rebuilding financial records. When a supplier demanded immediate payment before releasing construction materials, Paige rearranged personal investments so Ryan could preserve his company's reputation. She never introduced these moments as sacrifices. To her, marriage simply meant protecting what both people were building together. Ryan sincerely believed that too, at least in the beginning. Success, however, changes some people so gradually that even those closest to them struggle to recognize when the transformation begins. Ryan's company secured a major regional contract, then another. Soon, photographs of completed projects filled the company's website. Local business organizations invited him to networking events. Construction magazines quoted him. Industry podcasts requested interviews. Recognition became familiar. Compliments became expected. Somewhere along that journey, gratitude slowly gave way to confidence. Confidence gradually became certainty. Certainty eventually became entitlement. The change revealed itself through details so small that none of them seemed significant alone. Ryan stopped asking Paige to review contracts before signing them. He began making larger purchases without discussing them. Business dinners became increasingly frequent. Weekend meetings appeared unexpectedly on the family calendar. Phone calls that once happened openly moved behind closed office doors. Whenever Paige noticed these changes, she rarely questioned them immediately. Instead, she observed. She remembered. She wrote down dates. Not because she distrusted her husband, because she trusted facts more than assumptions. One autumn evening, Ryan returned home unusually energized. He spoke excitedly about hiring a new business development director. "She's exactly what the company needs," he said while setting his briefcase beside the dining table. "What's her name?" Paige asked. "Olivia Carter." Ryan described Olivia as ambitious, persuasive, and exceptionally talented at attracting new commercial clients. Everything sounded perfectly reasonable. And perhaps it was. At first. Over the following months, however, Olivia's name appeared more often in conversations. Client dinners, marketing conferences, weekend trade shows, even charity events. Ryan explained each occasion with calm confidence. Paige accepted every explanation without argument. She never searched his phone, never followed his car, never questioned his schedule in front of friends. But she quietly noticed patterns. Ryan smiled differently when answering certain text messages. He became unusually protective of his work calendar. Credit card statements showed restaurants he had never mentioned. Hotel charges appeared in cities where conferences lasted only one afternoon. Individually, none of these details proved anything. Together, they created questions. Questions Paige chose not to answer emotionally. Instead, she created another folder. Inside it, she placed printed statements, receipts, travel confirmations, and business expense reports, not as evidence against Ryan, simply as records. The narrator understood something Ryan never considered. Every decision Paige made reflected years of professional training. She knew investigations rarely depended upon dramatic discoveries. They depended upon consistent documentation collected long before anyone realized it mattered. Meanwhile, Ryan interpreted Paige's silence very differently. He mistook calmness for ignorance. He assumed that because she never confronted him, she noticed nothing. That misunderstanding slowly encouraged greater carelessness. Months later, Ryan suggested that Paige should begin traveling more often for her own career. "It'll be good for you," he said one evening. "You've worked hard. You deserve opportunities too." Paige appreciated the encouragement. She accepted invitations to represent her firm at regional investment conferences and property acquisition meetings. Ryan encouraged every trip. The narrator already knew why. Every mile Paige traveled made Ryan feel increasingly free from accountability. At the same time, Paige's professional responsibilities expanded significantly. Her firm entrusted her with increasingly complex commercial acquisitions across several states. These transactions required confidential negotiations, extensive due diligence, and absolute discretion. Even Ryan knew surprisingly little about the projects she handled. He never asked many questions. Property law, title structures, financing agreements, and investment entities sounded painfully boring to him. Whenever Paige mentioned reviewing ownership records late into the evening, Ryan usually laughed. "I don't know how you stay awake reading legal paperwork." She smiled. "It matters more than people think." Ryan nodded absent-mindedly before returning to his phone. Those quiet conversations disappeared almost as soon as they happened. Yet years later, every one of them would carry extraordinary meaning. Because hidden among thousands of ordinary documents sat a handful of pages whose legal significance exceeded anything Ryan had ever imagined. They rested untouched, protected, waiting. Neither Ryan nor Olivia knew those pages existed. Even most of Paige's colleagues had no reason to think about them. Only Paige understood exactly where they were stored. Only one attorney outside her firm had ever reviewed them carefully. And only the narrator knew that Ryan's greatest mistake had not yet occurred. It was still waiting. Just beyond the next business trip, the email arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Paige Mitchell had barely finished reviewing an investment report when her phone vibrated with a calendar notification from her firm's managing director. A commercial property acquisition in Nashville had entered its final negotiation stage sooner than expected. One of the senior partners had fallen ill, leaving Paige as the only person fully familiar with months of due diligence, financing structures, and title documentation. The meeting could not be postponed. She would need to leave Thursday morning and return Sunday evening. It was exactly the kind of assignment she had spent years preparing for. When she mentioned the trip over dinner, Ryan barely looked up from his phone. 4 days, he asked. 3 nights, Paige corrected gently. If everything closes on schedule, I'll be back before dinner Sunday. Ryan nodded. That's perfect. The words slipped out so naturally that neither of them paused. Perfect. Paige interpreted it as support. The narrator understood it differently. Ryan had been waiting for an opportunity that required no lies about business travel, no complicated scheduling, and no risk of Paige returning unexpectedly during the work week. 3 nights would be enough. Enough to rewrite the appearance of an entire marriage. On Wednesday afternoon, Ryan met Olivia Carter at a downtown cafe several miles from his office. Olivia arrived wearing oversized sunglasses despite the cloudy weather. She smiled before sitting across from him. "So," she asked, "is everything finally happening?" Ryan leaned forward. "She's leaving tomorrow." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "For how long?" "Long enough." Ryan removed his phone and opened several notes. "I already called the locksmith." Olivia stared at him. "You actually did it?" "I booked them for Friday morning." "What about her things?" "I've arranged movers." Olivia hesitated. "Ryan, are you sure?" He smiled with a confidence that had become increasingly familiar over the past year. "The house is mine." He spoke the sentence as though it required no further discussion. "I've paid the mortgage. I've handled every renovation. My business pays most of the bills now." He genuinely believed every word. The narrator knew something Ryan did not. Paying expenses and owning property were not always the same thing. Ryan had stopped distinguishing between contribution and legal ownership long ago. That misunderstanding would soon become expensive. Thursday morning arrived with unusually clear skies. Paige stood beside the kitchen island, placing the last of her documents into a leather briefcase. Her suitcase remained surprisingly small. She traveled the same way she approached everything else. Only what was necessary. Ryan kissed her goodbye. "Call me when you land." "I will. Good luck." She smiled warmly. "I'll miss home." Ryan smiled back. "So will I." Neither statement meant the same thing to each of them. After Paige's car disappeared around the corner, Ryan remained standing in the driveway longer than necessary. He watched until he was certain she would not return because of something forgotten. Only then did he take out his phone. His first call lasted less than 2 minutes. "She's gone." His second call reached the locksmith. "You can come tomorrow morning." The third call went to the moving company. "We're still on schedule." By lunchtime, every appointment had been confirmed. Ryan felt strangely relieved. Not guilty, relieved. He convinced himself he was simply ending a marriage that had already failed. That belief made every decision easier. Paige's flight landed in Nashville shortly before noon. Within an hour, she was seated inside a conference room overlooking downtown. Folders filled with environmental reports, lender requirements, zoning records, and title commitments covered the polished table. The negotiations demanded complete concentration. She reviewed every page carefully, corrected several drafting errors, asked detailed questions regarding recorded easements, verified ownership histories stretching back decades. Her colleagues appreciated something about Paige that clients often underestimated. She noticed details everyone else skipped. Late Friday evening, after nearly 10 hours of negotiations, the investment group reached a preliminary agreement. Everyone celebrated. Paige quietly returned to her hotel room. She called Ryan exactly as promised. "How's everything at home?" "Fine," Ryan answered easily. "Busy?" "A little," she smiled. "I'll be home Sunday." "I'll be here." The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. Ryan never sounded nervous. He believed everything remained under control. Friday morning, shortly after 9, a white locksmith van stopped outside the Mitchell residence. Several neighbors noticed immediately. Suburban streets rarely ignored unusual activity. 2 technicians approached the front door carrying tool cases. Ryan greeted them confidently. "I need every exterior lock replaced." The older technician looked at the work order. "Front, back, garage, side entrance." Ryan nodded. "Everything." "Anyone else need keys?" "My wife won't." The technician paused for just a moment. "Understood." Within 90 minutes, every lock had been replaced. New deadbolts, new electronic keypad, new garage remotes. Ryan tested each one personally. He felt an unexpected sense of victory, as though replacing hardware somehow erased years of shared history. The next arrival came shortly before noon. A moving truck. 4 workers stepped out carrying blankets, dollies, and cardboard boxes. One of the younger movers looked uncertain. "Everything inside." Ryan handed him a list. "Mostly the upstairs bedroom. Closets. Bathroom. My office stays." The foreman glanced toward the furnished living room. "You sure your wife's aware?" Ryan answered without hesitation. "We're separated." The explanation sounded convincing enough. The crew began working. Over the next several hours, they carefully carried clothing books, framed photographs, storage bins, and personal belongings into the driveway. Nothing was intentionally damaged. Everything appeared strangely professional. That almost made the scene worse. Several neighbors slowed their cars while passing. Children riding bicycles watched curiously before parents quietly called them inside. No one interfered. No one asked questions. Most assumed that they were witnessing a painful divorce. The narrator understood that they were witnessing something else entirely. A future courtroom exhibit. Olivia arrived later that afternoon. She parked discreetly in the driveway. Looking around, she lowered her voice. "This feels strange." Ryan laughed. "It'll feel normal in a week." She stepped inside. Boxes already lined the hallway. The bedroom looked noticeably different. Closet space stood empty. Bathroom shelves held only Ryan's belongings. Olivia walked slowly through the house. "So?" She smiled cautiously. "This is really happening." Ryan wrapped an arm around her shoulders. It already happened. He believed the difficult part was over. He believed changing locks created certainty. He believed silence meant surrender. Each assumption rested upon the same invisible mistake. He had never confirmed who legally controlled the property. Saturday morning brought another decision. Ryan contacted the home security monitoring company. "I need to update account access." "Certainly." He requested removal of Paige's entry codes, deleted her emergency contacts, updated notification settings, added Olivia as an authorized user. Digital confirmations arrived almost instantly by email. Ryan archived them without another thought. The narrator did not. Electronic records had remarkable memories. Unlike people, they forgot nothing. Meanwhile, Paige spent her Saturday reviewing revised purchase agreements with lenders. The closing had entered its final phase. She worked through lunch, missed 2 social dinners with colleagues, returned to her hotel after sunset carrying another folder filled with signed documents. She never imagined that while she carefully protected someone else's investment portfolio, her own marriage was being dismantled room by room. Yet, even from hundreds of miles away, the habits that defined Paige never disappeared. Before going to sleep, she organized receipts from the trip, saved hotel invoices, backed up work emails, placed every document inside clearly labeled folders. It was simply routine. The same routine Ryan had spent years dismissing as unnecessary. By Sunday evening, he would discover that habits built over decades rarely reveal their value until someone else makes an irreversible mistake. And Ryan Mitchell was only hours away from making the biggest one of his life. Sunday afternoon arrived with steady summer rain falling across the interstate as Paige Mitchell drove home from Nashville. The property acquisition had officially closed that morning. Her colleagues celebrated with brunch before returning to their respective cities, but Paige declined the invitation. She preferred reaching home before dark, unpacking quietly and preparing for Monday's work. She had called Ryan once before leaving the hotel. He answered after several rings. "You're on the road." "I just left." "Drive safely." "I should be home around 6. "I'll be around." Nothing in his voice sounded unusual. Nothing warned her that while she had spent the weekend protecting a multi-million-dollar transaction for her employer, Ryan had spent those same days dismantling the life they had built together. The narrator already knew that the next 20 minutes would become the most carefully documented moments of Paige's life. Not because she planned them, because she understood instinctively that facts disappear when emotions take control. She would allow herself neither. As Paige turned onto her street, something immediately felt different. Several neighbors were outside despite the rain. Mrs. Harper from across the road stood beneath her porch roof holding a watering can she had long since forgotten to use. A teenage boy paused halfway through mowing a lawn. An elderly couple walking their dog slowed almost to a stop. Nobody waved. Nobody smiled. Instead, they watched. Not with curiosity, with discomfort. Paige noticed the expressions before she noticed anything else. Her hands tightened slightly around the steering wheel. The driveway came into view. Her SUV rolled slowly to a stop. For several seconds, she simply stared through the windshield. Cardboard boxes, plastic storage bins, suitcases, garment bags, books, framed photographs, kitchen equipment. Everything she recognized as part of her everyday life sat stacked across the front lawn beneath blue tarps that barely protected them from the rain. She turned off the engine. Silence filled the vehicle. She neither gasped nor cried. She remained seated, looking carefully from one pile to the next. The narrator understood what few people around her did. Paige was not trying to understand what had happened. She was memorizing it. After nearly a minute, she stepped out of the vehicle. Rain immediately dampened her jacket. She walked toward the front porch without rushing. The electronic keypad beside the front door displayed an unfamiliar welcome screen. She entered her usual code. Error. She entered it again. Another error. A third attempt triggered a short warning tone before the screen locked temporarily. Only then did Paige reach for her house key. The key entered the lock. It refused to turn. She examined it once. The brass edges showed ordinary wear. Nothing was wrong with the key. The lock had been replaced. She understood immediately. Before she could knock, the front door opened. Ryan Mitchell stood inside, wearing jeans and a freshly pressed polo shirt. He looked almost relaxed, as though he had rehearsed this moment repeatedly. Behind him stood Olivia Carter. She wore one of Ryan's oversized sweaters despite the warm weather. A coffee mug rested comfortably in her hand. She looked less like a visitor than someone attempting to belong. Neither woman spoke first. Ryan finally broke the silence. "You weren't supposed to be back until later." Paige looked at him calmly. "I said around 6. He glanced briefly at his watch. "I guess you're early." She did not answer. Instead, she looked beyond him. Several decorative items inside the entryway had been moved. A different vase stood on the hallway table. Family photographs had disappeared from the wall. Someone had rearranged the furniture. Tiny changes, enough to communicate that another person had already begun rewriting the house. Ryan folded his arms. "I think it's better if we don't make this harder than it has to be." Paige finally met his eyes. "What happened?" His answer came without hesitation. "Our marriage is over." The sentence landed quietly. No shouting, no dramatic gestures. Just certainty. Olivia remained several steps behind him. She avoided looking directly at Paige. Ryan continued. "I've changed the locks. I've packed your things. You need to move on." Rain continued falling around them. Several neighbors still watched from a distance. Nobody approached. Nobody interrupted. Paige's voice remained steady. "You changed the locks while I was away." "Yes." "You put my belongings outside." "Yes." "And Olivia is living here." Ryan hesitated only briefly. "She will be." There was no denial, no attempt to soften the truth. The narrator recognized something Ryan completely overlooked. Every admission had just been made voluntarily. Every sentence had witnesses. Paige lowered her eyes briefly, not from shame, from concentration. She reached into her shoulder bag. Ryan visibly stiffened. Instead of pulling out legal papers or making an emotional scene, Paige removed her phone. She unlocked it, opened the camera, began recording. She started with the front door, then the new electronic keypad, the deadbolt, the door frame, the rain-soaked boxes, the moving labels still attached to several containers. She slowly filmed each pile from multiple angles. Ryan frowned. "What are you doing?" She answered simply. "Documenting." Olivia shifted uneasily. It's just stuff. Paige looked toward her. No, it's evidence. The sentence was quiet, almost gentle. Yet for the first time that afternoon, Ryan looked uncertain, only for a moment. Then confidence returned. You can record whatever you want. I don't care. I have every right. Paige said nothing. Instead, she photographed each shipping label, each damaged cardboard box, each water-stained family album. She zoomed in on the locksmith's small manufacturer sticker still attached beneath the new deadbolt. She photographed the serial number, then the electronic keypad, then the security company decal beside the door. Nothing escaped her attention. Mrs. Harper slowly crossed the street carrying a large umbrella. She hesitated. I'm so sorry, Paige. Paige thanked her quietly. Mrs. Harper lowered her voice. They came Friday morning. Who? The locksmith. And later, movers. She looked toward Ryan before continuing. I thought maybe you knew. Paige nodded once. Thank you. Mrs. Harper reached into her pocket. I took a few pictures. Paige looked surprised. I wasn't trying to interfere. It just didn't seem right. She handed Paige her phone. Several clear photographs showed the moving truck parked outside Friday afternoon. Others captured workers carrying furniture. One image included the locksmith van parked directly beside Ryan's truck. Paige asked politely, Would you mind sending these to me later? Of course, Ryan interrupted. This is ridiculous. Mrs. Harper looked directly at him. I only photographed what happened. Ryan stepped backward into the house. You people need to mind your own business. Nobody answered. Paige returned her attention to the lawn. Many boxes had labels written in black marker. Bedroom, office, personal files, seasonal clothing. She immediately noticed one container missing. The small fireproof document case she always kept inside the upstairs office closet. She did not react outwardly. Instead, she quietly made a note in her phone. Fireproof case not visible. Unknown location. The narrator already knew something Paige did not yet know. Ryan had never opened that case because he had never found it. It had been removed months earlier, not out of suspicion. Simply because Paige had needed several documents for unrelated investment work and decided the office safe at her company offered better protection. A routine decision. An ordinary precaution. One that would soon become extraordinarily important. Ryan stepped outside once more. I think we're done. You should take your things. Paige looked at him calmly. I'll arrange for them. You have until tomorrow. She made no reply. Instead, she opened the notes application on her phone. 6:08 p.m. locks replaced. Entry denied. Personal property removed. Witnesses present. Olivia residing inside property. Ryan admitted responsibility. She typed each line without emotion. Ryan watched with visible irritation. Are you seriously taking notes? Yes. For what? She saved the document before answering. So I remember exactly what happened. He laughed dismissively. You always did overthink everything. Paige slipped the phone back into her bag. No. She looked once more at the front door. I've simply learned that memories fade. Then she turned away. She did not shout. She did not threaten. She did not ask to come inside. She walked back toward her vehicle with the same quiet dignity she had carried throughout her marriage. Ryan watched her leave and felt an overwhelming sense of relief. He believed the hardest conversation of his life was over. He had no idea it had just become the strongest foundation of the legal case that was about to begin. Paige Mitchell did not drive to a hotel. She did not call her parents. She did not park outside a friend's house to cry. Instead, she drove to her office. The building stood nearly empty on a quiet Sunday evening. Only the security lights illuminated the lobby as she entered using her employee badge. The receptionist's desk sat vacant. The elevators moved silently through nearly deserted floors. She carried only one suitcase and her shoulder bag, nothing else. Everything Ryan had left on the lawn remained exactly where it was. The narrator understood why. Property could be collected later. Evidence could not always be preserved twice. Inside her office, Paige placed her laptop on the desk before doing anything else. She plugged in her phone, created a new folder, named it Mitchell Residence July Incident. She began uploading everything she had recorded: photographs, videos, timestamps, location data, voice notes. She duplicated the files onto an encrypted external drive, then onto the firm's secure cloud storage reserved for legal document retention. Only after 3 complete backups existed did she allow herself to lean back in her chair. She closed her eyes. Not because she intended to cry, because she needed exactly 60 seconds of complete silence before deciding what came next. When the minute ended, she opened another application. Calendar, Monday, 8:00 a.m. Daniel Brooks. She typed one sentence beside the appointment. Bring every document. Daniel Brooks had practiced real estate litigation for nearly 28 years. His office occupied the 3rd floor of a brick building several blocks from the county courthouse. He had represented developers, lenders, investors, homeowners, and title insurance companies. By the time Paige arrived Monday morning, carrying 2 banker's boxes and a rolling document case, Daniel expected another difficult divorce involving disputed property. He did not expect what sat inside those boxes. Daniel stood to greet her. "Paige, thank you for seeing me on short notice. You sounded unusually serious." "I am." She neither exaggerated nor minimized what had happened. Instead, she described the previous afternoon in strict chronological order. Departure from Nashville, arrival home, changed locks, Ryan's statements, Olivia's presence, witnesses, photographs, videos, neighbor observations. Daniel interrupted only once. "You recorded his admissions?" "Yes." He spoke voluntarily. "Yes." "No threats?" "No." Daniel wrote several notes. Then he looked toward the boxes. "And these?" "My records." He smiled politely. "I probably won't need everything." Paige answered calmly, "I brought everything anyway." The narrator noticed Daniel's expression. Experienced attorneys often recognized organized clients within seconds. This was something different. The first box contained household financial records, every mortgage statement, every property tax payment, insurance renewals, maintenance invoices, utility records, home improvement contracts. The second box contained digital backups, printed emails, closing disclosures, escrow correspondence, bank statements, wire confirmations, corporate records connected to Ryan's business. Daniel slowly removed several folders. Each carried printed labels: residence, mortgage, county records, insurance, taxes, home renovations, security system, travel, business expenses. He looked up. "You've kept all of this for years. Why?" Paige considered the question. "I don't like looking for documents after I need them." Daniel nodded, almost unconsciously. "I wish half my clients thought that way." For the next 3 hours, they worked methodically, not emotionally. Daniel asked questions. Paige answered only what she knew. Never guessed, never assumed, never exaggerated. When exactly were the locks changed? between Thursday morning and Sunday evening. How do you know? My neighbor photographed the locksmith truck Friday. Did Ryan admit replacing them? Yes. Recorded? Yes. Daniel checked another box. Did he deny placing your belongings outside? No. Did he acknowledge Olivia was moving in? Yes. Again, Daniel checked another box. The legal issues were beginning to organize themselves. Wrongful exclusion, marital property, possible conversion of personal property, potential financial misconduct, perhaps more, much more. Around noon, Daniel opened a folder labeled Closing Documents. He expected routine paperwork. Instead, he became unusually quiet. He adjusted his reading glasses, read one page, then another, then returned to the first. Paige noticed immediately. "What is it?" Daniel did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached for the county parcel number listed near the top of one document. He opened his computer, logged into the county property records database, entered the parcel identification number. The search loaded. He stared silently at the screen. Then he looked back at Paige. Has Ryan ever actually read these? I don't think so. You never discussed ownership. We discussed buying the house, not the title. No. Daniel leaned back slowly. Nothing more. Only that one thoughtful sound. He printed several public records, placed them beside the closing documents, compared legal descriptions, compared recording numbers, compared signatures, compared filing dates. Everything matched. Daniel looked toward Paige again. I'd like to verify something before I say too much. Of course. He picked up his phone. Within minutes, he reached the title company that had handled the closing years earlier. The original escrow officer had retired. Another employee located archived digital records. Daniel requested certified copies. How soon? He listened carefully. Today. Another pause. Excellent. He ended the call. They still have everything. Paige simply nodded. She had expected nothing less. After lunch, Daniel turned his attention toward finances. He reviewed joint bank statements, Ryan's business accounts, mortgage payments, credit card activity. Something small caught his attention. He circled 3 transactions. What are these? Paige leaned closer. Contractor deposits. They're unusual. How? They happened after you left for Nashville. She studied the statement. Ryan had hired a moving company, a locksmith, a cleaning service. Each payment appeared electronically. Each carried precise timestamps. Daniel smiled faintly. He paid everyone electronically. Yes. He left an excellent paper trail. Paige made no comment. Daniel continued reviewing. Another transfer appeared. Furniture delivery, interior decorating. Several purchases delivered directly to the house. Again, electronic records, timestamps, merchant names, nothing hidden. Ryan apparently believed ownership required no proof because in his mind, he already possessed it. The narrator understood that every confident purchase quietly strengthened Paige's future case. Late that afternoon, Daniel's assistant entered carrying a large sealed envelope. Certified copies. Daniel thanked her. He carefully opened the package. Inside rested official county certified reproductions, embossed seals, recording certifications, complete filing histories. He spread the documents across the conference table. The room fell silent. Paige watched him examine every page. Finally, Daniel removed his glasses. Paige. Yes. I want to be careful. She waited. I don't like making promises before litigation. I understand. But He tapped one certified document gently. There's something Ryan appears never to have understood. Paige remained silent. Daniel continued. These records may completely change the direction of this case. He still refused to say more. Not yet. Professional caution demanded verification from multiple sources. But the narrator already knew. Daniel had reached the same conclusion that would later astonish Ryan. Before Paige left the office that evening, Daniel handed her a short list. Starting tomorrow, I need a few additional items. She read carefully. Original homeowner's insurance policy, security monitoring agreement, electronic access records, personal property inventory, any emails discussing purchase financing. She nodded. I have all of them. Daniel smiled. I suspected you might. As Paige gathered her boxes, Daniel added one final instruction. Don't contact Ryan. I wasn't planning to. Don't respond emotionally if he contacts you. I won't. And don't retrieve your belongings yet. She looked at him. Why? Because right now, he glanced once more toward the certified property records lying across his desk. I'm beginning to think those boxes on the lawn may become only a very small part of what this lawsuit is actually about. Paige quietly carried her documents toward the elevator. She still had no desire for revenge. She wanted only the truth. Fortunately for her, the truth had been patiently waiting inside government records for years. Ryan simply had not bothered to read them. By Tuesday morning, Daniel Brooks had cleared most of his schedule. He disliked distractions whenever a case began revealing unexpected layers. What had initially appeared to be a painful marital dispute now carried the unmistakable outline of something far more significant. Property law rarely rewarded assumptions. It rewarded documentation. Ryan Mitchell had built his confidence upon assumptions. Paige Mitchell had built her life upon documentation. The difference was about to become impossible to ignore. Daniel arrived at his office before sunrise. The certified county records still lay neatly arranged across his conference table, exactly where he had left them the previous evening. He poured a cup of black coffee before examining them once more. Parcel identification number, recording information, warranty deed, settlement statement, title commitment, owner's title insurance, escrow instructions. Every page pointed toward the same conclusion. Still, experience had taught him never to rely upon a single source. He requested one more verification. His assistant contacted the county recorder's office. Within an hour, another certified confirmation arrived electronically. Nothing had changed. Nothing had been amended. Nothing had been transferred. The ownership history remained exactly as it had been recorded years earlier. Daniel finally allowed himself a slow breath. Now he was ready to explain what he had discovered. Paige arrived carrying another slim folder. Unlike the previous day, she looked well-rested. She had spent the night at a business hotel near her office after retrieving only essential clothing from a department store. She still had not touched the belongings Ryan had left on the lawn. Daniel appreciated that decision. Once litigation became likely, preserving the scene exactly as it existed often mattered more than convenience. After greeting each other, neither wasted time. Daniel spread several documents across the table. I verified everything. Paige remained silent. The county records matched the closing records. She nodded. I expected they would. Daniel smiled faintly. You already knew. I knew how we purchased the property. You weren't completely certain Ryan understood. Paige looked down at the papers. I never asked. Years earlier, when Ryan's construction business was still new, financing had been considerably more complicated than either of them had expected. Ryan's company had experienced unpredictable revenue. Several lenders considered him a higher lending risk because his business had not yet established a lengthy financial history. Paige, meanwhile, had maintained exceptional credit. Her investment firm had provided stable income for years. She also possessed substantial personal savings accumulated before the marriage through careful investing and an inheritance from her late grandmother. Those factors dramatically changed the financing options available to them. Daniel opened the original lender's underwriting summary. The bank wanted stronger long-term security. Paige remembered the meetings clearly. The loan officer had explained everything patiently. Ryan had attended every appointment. He simply disliked paperwork. Whenever documents exceeded a few pages, he quickly lost interest. His attention usually shifted toward renovation ideas, landscaping, or future remodeling plans. Legal language bored him. Paige read every page. Ryan signed wherever closing agents indicated. At the time, nobody imagined the distinction would someday matter. Daniel pointed toward one section of the closing package. "Do you remember this recommendation?" Paige nodded. The attorney suggested separating legal ownership from operational responsibility. Exactly. The recommendation had not been unusual. Because Paige contributed the overwhelming majority of the down payment and qualified independently under the lender's underwriting requirements, the final ownership structure placed legal title solely in her name while allowing Ryan to reside in the home as her spouse. Their financial responsibilities as a married couple continued normally. Household expenses remained shared. Mortgage payments flowed from joint accounts. Ryan naturally treated the house as equally his. Emotionally, perhaps it was. Legally, the paperwork told a different story. Daniel spoke carefully. This arrangement wasn't hidden. No. It wasn't deceptive. No. Everyone at closing explained it. They did. Daniel nodded. Ryan simply never paid attention. Paige remembered the closing day more vividly than she expected. The conference room had been crowded. The escrow officer moved steadily through a stack nearly 2 inches thick. Ryan checked his watch repeatedly. He joked that buying a house required enough signatures to purchase a small country. Everyone laughed. When the escrow officer reached the deed package, she paused. This document establishes legal title. Paige remembered reading every paragraph. Ryan remembered asking how much longer the meeting would take. The attorney explained why the lender preferred the ownership structure. Ryan shrugged. If that's what gets us approved. He signed where instructed. Within minutes, the closing continued. No arguments, no confusion, no objections. Everything happened openly. The narrator understood something Ryan had forgotten years ago. Important decisions often arrive disguised as routine paperwork. Daniel opened another folder. There's more. Inside rested copies of several later transactions, refinancing paperwork, insurance renewals, property tax correspondence, annual escrow statements. Every official communication identifying ownership had been mailed to Paige. Many were addressed specifically to her as the titled owner. Ryan occasionally collected the mail. He rarely opened envelopes that appeared legal. If he did, he handed them to Paige without reading. He trusted her. Over time, trust slowly became indifference. Eventually, indifference became ignorance. What about the other properties? Daniel asked. Paige opened the folder she had carried that morning. There are 3. Daniel raised an eyebrow. 3. She slid several documents across the table. One involved a small rental duplex purchased as an investment. Another covered a commercial warehouse jointly financed through Paige's investment portfolio. The third involved vacant land acquired years earlier when prices remained unusually low. Each transaction had followed similar legal principles. Not identical, but similar. Ryan participated in discussions. Paige managed documentation. Closing agents explained ownership structures. Ryan signed, then forgot. Daniel reviewed each file carefully. His expression grew increasingly thoughtful. So Ryan believes that everything belongs equally to both of us, Paige finished. And legally, Paige answered quietly. The documents speak for themselves. Daniel leaned back. I've practiced property law for almost 3 decades. Paige listened. I've represented clients who intentionally concealed assets. I've represented clients who forged deeds. I've represented people who fabricated entire ownership histories. He paused. This isn't one of those cases. No. This appears to be something much simpler. What? A man who stopped reading before the important pages. Neither laughed. The observation felt too accurate. Meanwhile, across town, Ryan enjoyed breakfast with Olivia inside the very kitchen where Paige had once prepared Sunday mornings without complaint. Olivia scrolled through decorating ideas on her tablet. I think lighter cabinets would open the space. Ryan nodded. We can renovate before Thanksgiving. What about the upstairs office? We'll turn it into a guest room. He spoke confidently. Future plans came easily. The past no longer interested him. His phone buzzed. An email notification. Mortgage servicing update. Without opening it, Ryan deleted the message. More junk, he muttered. Olivia smiled. You never read those. I don't need to. The narrator almost found irony unnecessary. Ryan's habits required no exaggeration. They explained themselves. Back in Daniel's office, another issue emerged. The locks. Paige looked up. Yes. Daniel folded his hands. Changing locks on property is one issue. Excluding someone from property they legally own? He allowed the sentence to remain unfinished. Paige understood. So, what happens next? We proceed carefully. He outlined the strategy. First, preserve every document. Second, obtain certified electronic access records from the security company. Third, subpoena locksmith invoices if necessary. Fourth, request moving company records. Fifth, secure witness statements while memories remained fresh. No dramatic confrontation. No public accusations. Just procedure. Exactly the approach Paige preferred. Before leaving, Daniel handed Paige a thin notebook. Use this. She looked at its blank pages. For what? A daily chronology. I already keep notes. I know. But from today forward, record every phone call, every email, every text, every expense, every interaction involving Ryan. She nodded. I will. Daniel smiled. I didn't doubt it. As Paige walked toward the elevator, she realized something unexpected. For the first time since returning home, she no longer felt confused. She still felt hurt. She still grieved the marriage she believed she had. But uncertainty had begun giving way to clarity. Ryan had believed changing the locks gave him control. He still had no idea that years earlier, with little more than impatient signatures and unread documents, he had quietly handed that control away himself. The locks on the doors were new. The deeds inside the county archives were not. And in the eyes of the law, only one of those would ultimately matter. Ryan Mitchell woke Wednesday morning convinced that the most difficult part of his new life was already behind him. The divorce had not even been filed. No judge had heard a single argument. No attorney had contacted him. Yet in Ryan's mind, everything important had already been settled. Paige was gone. Olivia was living with him. The house felt different. That was enough. The narrator understood something Ryan still could not see. When people believe they have already won, they often stop protecting themselves. That was precisely when mistakes multiplied. Olivia stood in the kitchen, flipping through paint samples spread across the breakfast counter. "I've been thinking," she said. "The whole first floor feels dated." Ryan poured himself coffee. "So let's change it." "You mean after everything's finalized?" Ryan laughed. "No, I mean now." Olivia looked surprised. "What if Paige objects?" Ryan shrugged. "To what? It's my house." He spoke the words with such confidence that Olivia stopped questioning him. Ryan opened his laptop. Within minutes, he had scheduled appointments with 2 remodeling companies. One specialized in custom kitchens. The other handled luxury flooring installations. Both agreed to visit the house later that week. Neither contractor knew they were stepping into a property that would soon become the subject of litigation. That afternoon, representatives from Premier Home Renovations arrived. Ryan walked them through every room. "I want hardwood throughout. The staircase, the upstairs hallway, the guest bedrooms." He pointed confidently from room to room. Olivia followed closely behind, already discussing furniture placement. "What about this wall?" she asked. "If we remove it, the living room would feel much larger." The contractor measured carefully. "It's load-bearing." "So," Ryan answered before the contractor could continue, "if engineering says it can be done, do it." The estimator entered notes onto a tablet. Every measurement, every requested modification, every proposed improvement. At the end of the visit, Ryan electronically signed a preliminary renovation agreement. The timestamp automatically recorded the exact date and time. A copy immediately appeared in his email. He archived it without another thought. The narrator did not. Digital signatures had remarkable memories. The following morning, a furniture delivery truck arrived. Olivia had spent nearly $15,000 selecting new living room furniture. Ryan insisted on paying. "You shouldn't. I want to." The purchase went through their joint credit card. Again, electronic records, merchant information, delivery confirmation, customer signature, photographs taken by the delivery crew proving successful installation. Everything entered permanent databases before lunchtime. Ryan never imagined ordinary shopping receipts could someday appear inside a courtroom exhibit. Across town, Paige sat quietly inside Daniel Brooks's conference room. A legal assistant projected documents onto a large monitor. Daniel had begun organizing evidence chronologically. "Let's work forward from Thursday morning." Paige nodded. The screen displayed airline boarding records, hotel check-in confirmation, conference attendance logs, GPS timestamps from her phone, restaurant receipts. Every movement during her Nashville trip appeared supported by independent documentation. Daniel smiled slightly. "You have an unusually well-documented weekend." Paige answered matter-of-factly. "My company reimburses expenses." "So you keep everything?" "I always do." Daniel wrote another note. "Good." Next came Ryan's activities. Unlike Paige's records, his timeline emerged from dozens of unrelated sources. Locksmith invoice, moving company payment, security system modification request, credit card purchases, furniture delivery, contractor consultations, home improvement deposits. Each event stood independently. Together they formed an increasingly complete picture. Daniel looked toward Paige. He documented almost everything himself. "I noticed." Most defendants don't. Paige remained silent. The narrator understood why. She had no interest in celebrating Ryan's mistakes. She simply recognized them. Meanwhile, Ryan hosted a small dinner that Friday evening. 3 business associates arrived shortly after 7. Among them were Ethan Walker, Ryan's operations manager, and Mark Sullivan, one of his longtime clients. Olivia prepared dinner. Soft music filled the dining room. Wine bottles rested on the kitchen island. The atmosphere resembled a housewarming celebration. At one point, Ethan looked around. "Paige traveling again?" Ryan smiled. "We're separating." The room became noticeably quieter. Mark carefully set down his glass. "I'm sorry to hear that." Ryan waved dismissively. "It was overdue." No one responded immediately. Ryan continued. "Olivia's moving in." He spoke with pride rather than hesitation. Olivia smiled politely. The conversation gradually shifted back toward business. Nobody argued. Nobody questioned him. Still, Ethan quietly noticed something. Every framed photograph showing Ryan and Paige together had disappeared. Family vacations, holiday gatherings, wedding pictures, gone. The walls looked strangely unfinished. He mentioned nothing. Yet the image remained with him. Later that night, Olivia carried a storage box into the garage. Inside, she found several binders stacked neatly together. Each carried printed labels: home maintenance, insurance, utilities, appliance manuals. She called toward Ryan. "Do you still need these?" Ryan barely looked up from the television. "Probably not. They're mostly paperwork." Olivia laughed. Paige really loved organizing. Ryan smiled. "She kept everything." "What should I do?" "Put them somewhere." Olivia placed the binders onto a high garage shelf. Neither opened them. Neither noticed that several invoice folders inside documented years of improvements made to the house. Not dramatic evidence, just more pieces waiting patiently. Saturday morning brought another unnecessary decision. Ryan contacted the landscaping company. "I want the front yard redesigned." The representative scheduled an appointment. "We'll prepare several concepts." Ryan smiled. "Perfect." Olivia suggested replacing the flower beds Paige had planted herself years earlier. "They're old-fashioned." Ryan agreed immediately. Within hours, workers removed flowering shrubs Paige had carefully maintained every spring. New decorative stone borders replaced them. Security cameras mounted nearby recorded the entire project. Again, automatic timestamps, video archives. The house itself quietly preserved its own history. At Daniel's office, another meeting had begun. This time, an investigator hired by the firm presented preliminary findings. "We've spoken with 6 neighbors." Daniel looked interested. "Willing to testify?" "Possibly." "What did they observe?" The investigator reviewed his notes. "Multiple moving trucks Friday. Locksmith vehicle. Furniture deliveries. Olivia staying overnight immediately afterward." He paused. Several neighbors independently confirmed Ryan told them Paige wasn't coming back. Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "No coaching?" "None." "Separate interviews?" "Yes." "Independent witnesses, independent observations, independent memories." Exactly what experienced litigators valued. Daniel then asked another question. "The security company?" "We submitted preservation requests yesterday." "Good." "Electronic entry logs would remain intact. Code changes, access deletions, administrative modifications. Every digital action performed during Paige's absence remained stored inside company servers." Ryan had unknowingly created another detailed timeline. Saturday afternoon, Ryan and Olivia visited a luxury appliance showroom. They selected a commercial-grade refrigerator, double ovens, a wine cooler. Ryan signed financing documents electronically. The sales representative asked a routine question. "Will both homeowners be signing?" Ryan answered casually. "No, just me." The representative marked the file accordingly. Another electronic record, another statement, another timestamp. No one inside the showroom realized how significant such an ordinary conversation might later become. That evening, Daniel called Paige. "I've reviewed today's updates. Anything important?" "Very." He paused. Ryan appears to believe that acting like an owner automatically makes someone the owner. Paige listened quietly. Daniel continued. "Every renovation, every purchase, every contractor, every statement, they all reinforce the same assumption." "And assumptions," Paige said softly, "don't change recorded deeds." Daniel smiled. "Exactly." After ending the call, Paige closed the notebook Daniel had given her days earlier. Every interaction remained carefully recorded. Every expense, every conversation, every development. She never imagined such notes would become emotionally comforting. Yet they did, because each page reminded her that truth did not require raised voices. It required consistency. Across town, Ryan raised a glass of wine with Olivia as they discussed paint colors, furniture fabrics, and vacation plans for the following summer. He believed he was building a future. He never considered that every invoice arriving in his email was quietly helping build Paige's legal case instead. And the more comfortable he became inside the house, the less careful he grew. The law had always favored evidence over confidence. Ryan simply had not noticed the difference. 1 week after Paige Mitchell found herself locked out of her own home, the legal case had grown far beyond a simple marital dispute. Daniel Brooks no longer referred to it as the lockout. Inside his office, every new document pointed toward a broader pattern. Unauthorized exclusion, control of personal property, financial decisions made under false assumptions, electronic records that contradicted Ryan Mitchell's growing confidence. The narrator understood something neither Ryan nor Olivia had begun to suspect. The case was no longer depending upon what anyone remembered. It was beginning to depend entirely upon what machines had recorded. Computers rarely forgot. Servers rarely took sides. Thursday morning began with a meeting involving Daniel Paige, his senior paralegal Linda Foster, and a digital evidence consultant named Marcus Hale. Marcus specialized in preserving electronic evidence before it could be altered or deleted. He spread several folders across the conference table. "I've reviewed everything you've collected so far." Daniel nodded. "What concerns you?" Marcus answered immediately. "Nothing." Daniel looked surprised. Marcus smiled. "And that's unusual." He pointed toward Paige. "Most clients arrive after deleting text messages. They replace phones. They lose emails. They overwrite security footage." He opened Paige's digital archive. She preserved everything. Paige simply listened. Marcus continued. "Original files, original timestamps, original metadata. No editing, no compression, no alterations." Daniel leaned back. "So the chain of custody is clean." "Extremely." Marcus rarely complimented evidence. He trusted systems more than people. Today, however, the organization impressed even him. Next came the emails. Thousands of them. Not dramatic confessions, not emotional arguments. Routine communication accumulated over years. Daniel divided them into categories: mortgage correspondence, insurance notices, home maintenance, contractor communication, county tax records, utility services, security monitoring, investment records. At first glance, nothing seemed extraordinary. But Marcus had learned something after 2 decades examining electronic records. Truth often appeared inside routine communication rather than dramatic messages. He searched one phrase, owner. Hundreds of results appeared. Most proved irrelevant. Then one email from nearly 4 years earlier caught his attention. It came from the homeowner's insurance company. Dear Miss Paige Mitchell, as the titled property owner, please review the attached renewal documents. Marcus enlarged the screen. Daniel quietly read every word. Paige remembered receiving the email. She had signed the renewal electronically before forwarding a copy to Ryan for household budgeting purposes. Daniel looked toward her. Did Ryan ever mention this wording? No. He received the forwarded copy. Yes. Marcus searched again. Ryan had replied only one sentence. Looks good. Thanks for handling it. No questions, no objections. No indication he had even opened the attachment. Daniel smiled faintly. Interesting. Another search produced correspondence from the county tax office. Again, dear property owner. Again, addressed solely to Paige. Again. Ryan had been copied later only for payment coordination. The pattern repeated itself dozens of times. Mortgage servicing, insurance, tax assessments, title updates. Official communications consistently recognized Paige. Ryan consistently ignored them, not intentionally, simply habitually. The narrator almost pitied him. Almost. Meanwhile, Ryan sat inside his office preparing for a quarterly meeting. Business had never been better. Several new commercial contracts promised steady income. For the remainder of the year, employees congratulated him. Clients praised recent projects. His confidence continued growing. Olivia stopped by carrying lunch. You've been working nonstop. Ryan smiled. I'm building something. She kissed him briefly. You're finally happy. He believed that. He genuinely believed removing Paige from the house had removed every complication from his life. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He ignored it. A voicemail arrived moments later, still ignored. The narrator already knew the caller. Daniel Brooks's office. Back at the law firm, Marcus shifted attention toward Ryan's digital activities. Publicly available information alone revealed surprisingly much. Social media photographs, restaurant check-ins, contractor reviews, home improvement purchases. Olivia had unknowingly contributed even more. She posted several photographs celebrating fresh beginnings. Inside one picture, part of the living room appeared behind her. Marcus enlarged the image. A recently delivered sofa, matching coffee table, decorative artwork, timestamp, location tag, posting date. Everything matched purchase records already collected. Daniel almost laughed. People document their own cases. Marcus nodded. More often than you'd think. Linda Foster entered carrying another envelope. The security company responded. Daniel immediately opened it. Inside rested administrative logs. Every keypad modification, every deleted access code, every newly authorized user, every system notification. Electronic precision. Thursday, 11:14 a.m. administrative access initiated. 11:16 a.m. Paige Mitchell access code deleted. 11:18 a.m. Ryan Mitchell master code updated. 11:21 a.m. Olivia Carter added as authorized resident. Daniel slowly placed the pages on the table. No opinions, no speculation, just records. Paige studied them quietly. She recognized the exact time. At 11:21 that morning, she had been sitting inside a Nashville conference room, negotiating easement language with commercial lenders. Marcus compared timestamps. Perfect alignment. The next issue involved phone records. Not conversations, only timing. Daniel had obtained authorization from Paige to examine her own call history. Nothing unusual appeared. Calls to coworkers, hotels, rental car agency, Ryan. The duration of each conversation matched her memory. Marcus then compared Ryan's publicly available business records. Several contractor appointments occurred during periods Ryan later claimed he had been working elsewhere. Not proof of dishonesty, not yet. Just another inconsistency. Daniel highlighted them anyway. Friday morning brought another important development. The moving company responded to a preservation request. Their dispatch manager agreed to provide documentation voluntarily. Invoices, work orders, employee schedules, photographs taken before transport. One particular image immediately caught everyone's attention. A supervisor had photographed every stack of belongings before leaving the property to document completion of the assignment. One picture showed boxes neatly arranged across the lawn. Another captured the front entrance. The new electronic keypad appeared clearly visible. Ryan stood in the doorway speaking with workers. Timestamp, GPS coordinates, original file metadata. Everything remained intact. Daniel looked toward Paige. This is becoming unusually comprehensive. She answered quietly. I didn't expect any of this. I know. That's why it's persuasive. Across town, Ryan finally listened to the voicemail he had ignored. Mr. Mitchell, this is Daniel Brooks's office. We represent Paige Mitchell. We'd appreciate returning several personal items belonging to our client. Please contact us at your earliest convenience. Ryan frowned. That's it. No threats, no accusations, just a request. He laughed. I knew she'd hire a lawyer. Olivia looked up from the dining table. What did they want? Her things. So, they can pick them up. He deleted the voicemail. Neither noticed he had failed to return the call. Daniel expected exactly that response. Silence often revealed as much as conversation. Late Friday afternoon, Marcus presented one final discovery. He projected an enlarged photograph taken by Mrs. Harper, the neighbor, across the street. The image showed the locksmith van parked in front of the house, nothing unusual, until Marcus zoomed farther. The technician's tablet remained visible through the windshield, barely legible. Yet enough information could be enhanced to identify the work order number. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You can read that. Not entirely, but enough. He contacted the locksmith company immediately. Within minutes, customer service confirmed they retained complete electronic records linked to every work order. Technician notes, invoices, service times, payment confirmations, digital customer signatures. Daniel thanked them and requested formal preservation. Another electronic trail secured. Another independent source. Another witness that required no memory. As evening settled over Charlotte, Paige sat alone in her hotel room, reviewing Daniel's latest updates. She closed her notebook after writing only one sentence. Facts are beginning to meet each other. She stared at those words for several moments. The case no longer depended upon whether Ryan admitted what he had done. It no longer depended upon Olivia changing her story. Emails supported financial records. Financial records supported invoices. Invoices supported security logs. Security logs supported witness statements. Witness statements supported photographs. Every independent source quietly reinforced another. Across town, Ryan remained convinced he had merely ended an unhappy marriage. He never realized that every email he ignored, every electronic receipt he archived, every contractor he hired, and every digital system he updated had created a network of evidence stronger than any argument either side could ever make. Without intending to, he had spent the past week building the most reliable witness against himself. And that witness never forgot a single detail. 2 weeks had passed since Ryan Mitchell changed the locks. From the outside, life appeared to be settling into a new routine. Neighbors mowed their lawns, children rode bicycles through the subdivision after school. Delivery trucks came and went. The Mitchell house looked almost normal again. Fresh flowers now lined the front walkway where Paige had once planted white hydrangeas. New outdoor furniture occupied the patio. Olivia Carter had gradually replaced traces of another woman's life with decorations of her own choosing. Ryan believed the neighborhood had already accepted the changes. The narrator knew better. People had stopped talking because they were waiting. And before long, official letters would begin asking questions that Ryan could not easily answer. Monday morning began with an envelope that Ryan almost ignored. The return address belonged to the mortgage servicing company. He opened it absent-mindedly while drinking coffee. Inside was a routine notification regarding annual escrow adjustments. He skimmed the first paragraph. Nothing unusual. Monthly payment, insurance review, property taxes. Then one sentence caught his attention. Please ensure that all ownership information on file remains accurate. Ryan frowned. What does that even mean? Olivia looked over from the kitchen island. What? Nothing. He folded the letter. Just bank paperwork. Without reading further, he placed it inside a kitchen drawer already filled with unopened correspondence. The narrator recognized the irony. The bank was asking him to confirm information he had never truly understood. Later that afternoon, another letter arrived. This time from the homeowner's insurance company. Ryan opened it more carefully. The company requested verification before renewing certain coverage endorsements connected to the property. Several forms required signatures from the titled owner. Ryan immediately reached for a pen. Halfway through the first page, he paused. The signature line did not read Ryan Mitchell. Instead, it read, Property Owner. Beneath that appeared only one printed name, Paige Mitchell. Ryan stared for several seconds. There must be some mistake. Olivia walked closer. What happened? They still have Paige's name on the insurance. Olivia shrugged. They probably just haven't updated their records. Ryan nodded. Exactly. He convinced himself the explanation was obvious. He placed the forms aside, intending to call the insurance company later. He never did. Across town, Daniel Brooks received the same insurance correspondence through discovery preparations. Unlike Ryan, Daniel did not consider it routine. He highlighted 3 sections before placing the document inside an expanding evidence binder. Every official communication identifying Paige as owner strengthened the consistency of the legal record. Property law valued consistency, and consistency was rapidly becoming Paige's strongest ally. On Tuesday morning, Ryan arrived at his office to find his operations manager, Ethan Walker, waiting outside his door. You've got a minute. Sure. Ethan closed the door behind them. I need your signature on the warehouse lease renewal. Ryan skimmed the paperwork. Looks fine. As he signed, Ethan hesitated. I heard from Mark. Ryan looked up. About what? The dinner last week. Ryan smiled. What about it? He said things sounded complicated. Ryan shrugged dismissively. They're handled. Ethan chose his next words carefully. I've known Paige for years. So, she doesn't strike me as someone who walks away quietly. Ryan laughed. You think she's planning something? I think she's organized. Ryan leaned back. She's keeping paperwork somewhere. She always kept paperwork. The words left his mouth casually. Only after speaking them did something about the sentence linger in his mind. Paperwork. He suddenly remembered the filing cabinet upstairs, the office closet, the fireproof document case. He had not seen it during the move. For the first time in days, uncertainty flickered across his face. That evening, Ryan searched the upstairs office. Closets, shelves, desk drawers, storage boxes, nothing. No fireproof document case, no legal files, no original contracts. He searched the garage, basement, attic, nothing. Olivia watched from the doorway. What are you looking for? A document case. What kind? Black. Metal. About this big. He spread his hands. I've never seen it. Ryan searched another 20 minutes before finally stopping. Maybe the movers packed it. Olivia frowned. You hired them. I know. He immediately called the moving company. Customer service answered politely. After verifying the work order, the representative checked the inventory. We transported only the items listed by your supervisor. No safe, no lockbox, no fireproof case. Ryan ended the call slowly. The first small crack appeared beneath his confidence. Meanwhile, Paige spent the afternoon reviewing witness summaries with Daniel. Mrs. Harper, the elderly couple from 2 houses away, the teenage neighbor who had been mowing the lawn. Each statement independently described nearly identical events. Locksmith, moving truck, boxes, Ryan, Olivia. No exaggeration, no emotional language, only observations. Daniel closed the final statement. Witnesses usually disagree on small details. They don't hear, Paige asked quietly. Is that unusual? A little. What does it mean? It means they aren't trying to help anyone. They're simply describing what they saw. Exactly what courts preferred. Wednesday morning brought another surprise. Ryan received a call from the county tax office. The employee spoke politely. We're updating contact information for several properties. Ryan relaxed. Okay. We'd like to verify mailing preferences. No problem. The employee continued. For security purposes, may I confirm that you're authorized to make ownership changes? Ryan answered immediately. Yes. Could you verify your ownership status? I'm the homeowner. A brief pause followed. I'm sorry, sir. Our records don't currently reflect that. Ryan blinked. What? Our records identify another individual. Ryan's voice sharpened. There has to be an error. I recommend contacting the recorder's office if you believe the records are inaccurate. The call ended courteously. Ryan remained motionless. Olivia looked toward him from across the living room. What now? The county has the wrong information. That afternoon, Ryan drove directly to the county recorder's office. The waiting room remained crowded. After nearly 40 minutes, a clerk called his number. How can I help you? Ryan explained the phone conversation. The clerk entered the property address. Several moments passed. Then she turned her monitor slightly away, following office policy. Our records show current ownership exactly as recorded. Ryan frowned. I'd like a copy. Certainly. She'd printed several certified pages. Ryan paid the small fee. He folded the documents without reading them carefully. He intended to review everything at home. Instead, he placed them on the passenger seat and drove away. The narrator almost smiled. Ryan had finally obtained the very documents that had quietly governed his rights for years. He still had not read them. Daniel's investigators spent the same afternoon interviewing employees at the locksmith company. The technician who performed the work remained cooperative. I just changed the locks. Did anyone tell you both spouses agreed? No. What exactly were you told? The customer requested new locks. Did he identify himself? Yes. Did you ask about ownership? We don't normally verify deeds. Routine answers, professional answers, still useful, because they confirmed timing. Work performed Friday morning. Invoice paid electronically. Customer signature collected digitally. Everything matched existing evidence. Thursday evening, Olivia noticed Ryan had become unusually quiet. He sat alone in the study, staring at the county documents he had finally unfolded. Pages of legal descriptions, parcel numbers, recording information, technical language. He read slowly, then started over. He reached the signature pages. His own signature appeared. Paige's signature appeared. Witnesses, notaries, recording certifications. Everything looked familiar, yet somehow unfamiliar. I don't understand, he whispered. Olivia entered quietly. What's wrong? Ryan rubbed his forehead. I don't remember signing this. She looked at the documents. Then maybe you didn't. Ryan shook his head. No, I did. He stopped. Never actually read it. For the first time since Paige left the house, Ryan felt something he had managed to avoid. Not guilt, not yet. Something more unsettling, uncertainty. The certainty that had fueled every decision over the past 2 weeks no longer felt quite as solid. He still believed he was right, but he could no longer explain exactly why. Across town, Paige closed another notebook after finishing the day's chronology. She never asked Daniel whether Ryan had begun to realize the truth. She did not need to. The legal process had its own rhythm. Sooner or later, every unanswered question would lead back to the same place. The recorded deeds, the certified filings, the quiet paperwork Ryan had spent years dismissing. And for the first time, he had finally begun reading the pages that would ultimately determine whether the house behind those new locks had ever truly been his to control. 3 weeks after Paige Mitchell found herself locked out of her own home, the silence finally ended. Not with an argument, not with an angry phone call, not with a confrontation in the driveway. It ended with a process server knocking on Ryan Mitchell's office door at exactly 10:17 on a Thursday morning. The narrator had known from the beginning that justice in this story would not arrive through the raised voices. It would arrive in a sealed envelope. Ryan was reviewing a construction proposal when his receptionist called. There's someone here asking for you. Client? I don't think so. Send them in. A middle-aged man wearing a navy blazer entered, carrying a leather document pouch. Ryan Mitchell. Yes. The man extended several papers. You've been served. Ryan frowned. Served with what? Civil filings. The man waited until Ryan accepted the documents. Have a good day, sir. Less than 30 seconds later, he was gone. Ryan looked down at the first page. In the Superior Court of North Carolina. His pulse quickened. He turned another page. Plaintiff Paige Mitchell. Defendant Ryan Mitchell. The legal language seemed overwhelming. Claims regarding wrongful exclusion from residential property. Requests for declaratory relief regarding ownership. Protection of personal property. Preservation of evidence. Accounting of financial expenditures. Temporary injunctive relief. Ryan muttered quietly, "What the hell?" Within minutes, he called Olivia. "I need you to come to the office." What happened? I just got sued. Silence answered him. I'll be there. An hour later, the documents lay spread across Ryan's conference table. Olivia skimmed the first few pages. This looks serious. Ryan forced a laugh. It's just lawyers making things sound dramatic. Is it? They always do. But even while speaking, Ryan noticed something unsettling. The complaint did not accuse him emotionally. It did not describe him as cruel. It did not exaggerate. Instead, every allegation referenced attached evidence. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, Exhibit C, photographs, security logs, property records, electronic communications. The filing read less like an accusation and more like an organized timeline. Ryan suddenly wished it had been emotional. Emotions could be challenged. Documents were harder to dismiss. By early afternoon, Ryan sat inside the downtown office of attorney Rebecca Collins. Rebecca specialized in commercial litigation, but occasionally handled high-value property disputes. She greeted Ryan professionally. "Tell me everything." Ryan summarized events quickly. She left. We separated. I changed the locks. I packed her things. Rebecca interrupted. "You changed the locks while she was away." "Yes." "Did she agree?" "No." Rebecca wrote a note. "When exactly?" "About 3 weeks ago." "Did you notify her first?" "No." Rebecca looked up. "Why not?" Ryan hesitated. "I didn't think I needed to." Rebecca made another note. She began reviewing the complaint. Unlike Ryan, she read every page carefully, every exhibit reference, every cited statute, every requested remedy. Nearly 20 minutes passed before she spoke again. "Who prepared this?" "Her attorney." "Daniel Brooks?" Ryan nodded. Rebecca recognized the name immediately. "He knows property law." "Good. For Paige." Ryan frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means he usually doesn't file weak cases." Rebecca turned to the attached timeline. Friday, locksmith invoice, moving company payment, security system modifications, furniture deliveries, witness statements. Sunday, video recording, Ryan's admissions. Monday, preservation requests. Tuesday, certified county records. Everything appeared methodically organized. She looked toward Ryan. "Did all this happen?" "Mostly." "What part didn't?" Ryan struggled to answer. "It sounds worse written down." Rebecca nodded thoughtfully. "That's not what I asked." She flipped to another section. "This lawsuit repeatedly refers to property deeds." Ryan sighed impatiently. "She's obsessed with paperwork." Rebecca ignored the comment. "Where are the deeds?" "I don't know." "You've never seen them." "I probably have." "When?" "Years ago." "Did you read them?" Ryan remained silent. Rebecca noticed immediately. "You didn't." "I signed them." "That's not what I asked." "No." "You read them." "No." Rebecca closed the file. For several seconds, she said nothing. The narrator understood exactly why. Experienced attorneys recognized dangerous answers long before clients did. Rebecca logged into the county property database using her office subscription. She entered the parcel number from the complaint. The search results appeared. She leaned closer, read carefully, then opened the certified filing image. Another pause. Ryan watched impatiently. "What?" Rebecca enlarged the document. "What exactly did your wife do for a living?" "Asset management." "Real estate investments." Rebecca nodded slowly. "That explains a great deal." "What?" "I'm not prepared to draw conclusions yet." Ryan frowned. "What are you seeing?" "I need the complete closing file." Ryan leaned forward. "Can we beat this?" Rebecca answered honestly. "I don't know." "You don't know?" "I've been your attorney for less than an hour." She pointed toward the complaint. Daniel attached 37 exhibits. I've reviewed perhaps 10. I don't make predictions until I understand the documents. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. What should I do? Rebecca answered immediately. Nothing. What? Don't contact Paige. Don't delete emails. Don't move money. Don't renovate the property. Ryan looked confused. Why? Because if ownership becomes disputed, she stopped herself. I need more information. Meanwhile, Daniel Brooks met with Paige to review the filed complaint. Everything had proceeded exactly as planned. Service completed. Court accepted filings. Deadlines established. Daniel closed the file. Now we wait. Paige nodded. How long? Ryan will respond. His attorney will review everything. They'll either negotiate or litigate. Paige asked quietly, "What do you think they'll do?" Daniel smiled faintly. That depends on how carefully their attorney reads. The following day, Rebecca received electronic copies of the original closing documents. She spent nearly 2 hours reviewing every page. Loan application, settlement statement, title commitment, warranty deed, escrow instructions, addenda, insurance acknowledgments. Finally, she reached the recorded deed. She stopped reading, then returned to the previous page. She compared names, compared recording numbers, compared signatures, compared legal descriptions. Nothing conflicted. Everything aligned perfectly. Rebecca slowly removed her glasses. She stared silently through her office window. Ryan entered several minutes later. So, Rebecca gestured toward the chair. Sit down. He immediately recognized the seriousness in her voice. What happened? Rebecca slid one document across the desk. I need you to answer one question honestly. Okay. When you bought the house, did anyone explain the ownership structure? Ryan searched his memory. There was a lawyer. And he talked about financing. And I wasn't really paying attention. Rebecca nodded once. I suspected that. She tapped the deed gently. This document matters. Ryan looked at it. I know. No. Rebecca's voice remained calm. I don't think you do. She turned the page toward him. Read the first paragraph. Ryan began reading aloud. His voice slowed, then stopped entirely. He started again from the beginning. Another pause. His eyes moved repeatedly between two names. Only one appeared where he expected to. He looked up. This can't be right. Rebecca remained silent. They made a mistake. I've already confirmed the county record. Ryan shook his head. No. There has to be another document. There may be. But this one was officially recorded. Ryan's breathing grew noticeably heavier. I paid for that house. Rebecca answered carefully. I'm not discussing contributions. I'm discussing legal title. They're not always identical. For several moments, neither spoke. Ryan stared at the deed. The memories slowly returned. The endless stack of closing paperwork, the attorney explaining financing requirements, his impatience, his repeated questions about how much longer the meeting would take. Paige quietly reading every page before signing. He suddenly remembered laughing about legal language being boring. Rebecca watched understanding settle across his face, not complete understanding, only enough to recognize that something fundamental had escaped him for years. Across town, Daniel received notice that Ryan had retained counsel. He smiled. Rebecca Collins. Paige looked up. Is that important? She's competent. Will that make things harder? Daniel shook his head. No. It makes something else more likely. What? She'll read every page. Paige looked toward the window. The afternoon sunlight reflected softly against nearby office buildings. For weeks, she had remained almost entirely silent. She had allowed documents to speak instead. Now another attorney was finally reading the same pages Ryan had ignored for years. The locks on the front door had taken less than 2 hours to install. Understanding what those deeds truly meant would take Ryan much longer. And the legal battle had only just begun. The discovery phase began without drama. No television cameras waited outside the courthouse. No reporters crowded the hallways. No one raised their voice across polished conference tables. Instead, both legal teams exchanged documents. Thousands of pages, hundreds of emails, financial records, property files, electronic logs, photographs, video files. The narrator had known from the beginning that the decisive moments in this case would not happen in front of spectators. They would happen quietly, one document at a time. Daniel Brooks arrived at the Discovery Conference carrying 4 binders. Each was carefully labeled. Binder 1, Property Ownership. Binder 2, Financial Records. Binder 3, Electronic Evidence. Binder 4, Witness Statements. Across the table, Rebecca Collins had assembled her own files with equal precision. Ryan sat beside her, unusually quiet. For the first time since Paige returned from Nashville, he no longer projected certainty. He watched every document Daniel placed on the table. Every binder seemed heavier than the last. Paige entered a few moments later. She greeted no one except her attorney. She neither looked at Ryan nor Olivia, who had accompanied him, but remained outside the conference room as instructed. Her attention rested entirely on the proceedings. Rebecca began professionally. "We've reviewed the complaint." Daniel nodded. "We've reviewed your response. There are areas we agree upon, and areas we don't." Exactly as expected. Discovery was not a debate. It was an exchange. One by one, the binders opened. Daniel presented certified copies of the recorded deeds. County certifications, recording numbers, official seals. Rebecca compared each page against the copies she had already obtained independently. They matched perfectly. No discrepancies, no altered language, no missing pages. She quietly closed the folder. "There is no dispute regarding authenticity." Daniel simply nodded. Ryan shifted uneasily. The first issue he had hoped to challenge disappeared before anyone argued. Next came the closing package. Nearly 200 pages. Loan application, settlement statement, escrow instructions, title commitment, insurance acknowledgments, attorney certifications. Daniel slid several highlighted pages toward Rebecca. The ownership structure was explained during closing. Rebecca had already seen them. She read the highlighted paragraphs again, then turned toward Ryan. "Do you remember this meeting?" Ryan hesitated. "Some of it," Daniel asked calmly. "Do you dispute attending?" "No." "Do you dispute signing these documents?" "No." "Do you dispute that your signature appears before a notary?" Ryan swallowed. "No." Daniel asked nothing further. He did not need to. Rebecca then requested production of Paige's original digital records. Marcus Hale, the digital evidence consultant, had anticipated the request. Encrypted drives, metadata reports, verification logs, checksum authentication. Everything necessary to establish authenticity accompanied every file. Rebecca reviewed the chain of custody documentation carefully. "When were these files first copied?" Marcus answered immediately. "The evening page was excluded from the residence. Were originals altered?" "No." "Can that be verified?" "Yes." He handed her another report. Rebecca read silently for several moments. Finally, she nodded. No further questions. Marcus had spent his career preparing evidence for exactly this kind of examination. Every answer rested upon documentation rather than opinion. Attention shifted toward electronic communications. Daniel projected a timeline across the conference room monitor. Insurance emails, mortgage correspondence, county tax notices, security company notifications. Each official communication consistently identified Paige. Rebecca examined every message. She searched for anything contradicting the established pattern. Nothing appeared. Instead, another pattern emerged. Ryan repeatedly responded to forwarded emails with brief acknowledgments. Looks good. Thanks. Handled. Perfect. Never once did he question ownership language. Never once did he request corrections. Never once did he suggest the records were inaccurate. Rebecca quietly made another note. Daniel introduced the security system logs. Administrative access, deleted user codes, new authorized resident, timestamps, server verification. Ryan leaned toward his attorney. I changed the codes. Rebecca nodded. I know. I paid for the system. I know. Doesn't that matter? Rebecca answered carefully. It matters. He looked relieved. She continued. It simply may not matter in the way you think. Ryan fell silent again. After lunch came financial records, joint bank statements, credit card histories, electronic payments. Ryan watched transaction after transaction appear on the monitor. Locksmith, moving company, furniture retailer, interior decorator, home renovation deposits, landscaping contractor. Each payment occurred after Paige left for Nashville. Each carried timestamps. Each corresponded with independent invoices already in evidence. Daniel asked only one question. Do you dispute making these payments? Ryan looked toward Rebecca. She answered before he could. We do not dispute the transactions. Daniel nodded once. Again, no argument. Only another uncontested fact. The moving company supervisor testified remotely by video conference. His memory remained clear. We followed the customer's written instructions, Daniel asked. Who identified himself as the customer? Ryan Mitchell. Did you move items into another residence? No. We placed everything outside, exactly where instructed. Rebecca cross-examined professionally. Were the items damaged intentionally? No. Did anyone behave aggressively? No. Were your employees threatened? No. The supervisor answered every question calmly. No exaggeration, no emotion. His testimony helped both sides. Yet, the central facts remained unchanged. The locksmith technician appeared next. He reviewed digital work orders generated automatically by the company's dispatch software. Did you replace every exterior lock? Yes. Did anyone accompany Mr. Mitchell? No. Did you ask whether another owner consented? No. Why not? We're hired to replace locks. We don't determine ownership. Again, routine procedure, routine testimony, routine documentation. The ordinary nature of every witness somehow strengthened the case. Nobody appeared invested in the outcome. They simply described what happened. Late that afternoon, Daniel introduced something Ryan had nearly forgotten. The photographs taken by Mrs. Harper. Each image appeared beside independent timestamps from the moving company. The sequence matched perfectly. Marcus then displayed metadata extracted from the original image files. Creation time, GPS coordinates, camera information, no edits, no alterations. Rebecca reviewed the reports carefully. Finally, she spoke. We stipulate to authenticity. Ryan looked confused. "What does that mean?" She answered quietly. "It means we're not challenging whether they're genuine." He stared at the photographs. For the first time, he noticed something he had overlooked. In one picture, he himself stood smiling while speaking with the movers. His posture looked relaxed, confident, almost cheerful. He remembered feeling proud that afternoon. Now the same image felt strangely different. It no longer looked like confidence. It looked like certainty built on incomplete understanding. As the day neared its end, Daniel opened the final binder. Inside rested a simple notebook, Paige's handwritten chronology. Rebecca looked surprised. "You kept daily notes," Paige answered calmly. "Yes." "When did you begin?" "The day I came home." Daniel handed Rebecca a copy. Each page contained dates, times, conversations, observations. Nothing dramatic, nothing speculative, only factual entries. 6:08 p.m. entry denied. Ryan admitted replacing locks. Olivia present. Witnesses observed incident. Rebecca compared several entries against photographs, then against security logs, then against Ryan's own timeline. Everything aligned. She closed the notebook gently. "I've rarely seen records this consistent." Daniel smiled slightly. "Neither have I." After discovery concluded for the day, Rebecca asked Ryan to remain behind. The conference room emptied. Only stacks of binders remained. Ryan finally spoke. "So? How bad is this?" Rebecca chose her words carefully. "I'll answer honestly." He nodded. I don't think Daniel's strongest evidence is the deed." Ryan looked surprised. "It isn't." "No. It's everything supporting it." She gestured toward the binders. "Emails, financial records, security logs, witnesses, photographs, your own statements. They all tell exactly the same story." Ryan lowered his eyes. For weeks, he had hoped that somewhere inside thousands of pages, a contradiction would appear. A missing signature, an altered date, a mistaken address, anything. Instead, every document seemed to reinforce the next. Across town, Paige sat quietly in Daniel's office while he reorganized the binders for trial. Neither celebrated. Neither spoke about victory. Daniel finally broke the silence. "The law prefers consistency." Paige nodded. "So do I." Daniel smiled. "I noticed." Outside, the evening sun settled over the city. The discovery process had ended. Every significant document had found its place. Every electronic record had met another independent source, confirming the same facts. Ryan had once believed changing a lock could rewrite reality. Now he faced something far more difficult to change, a paper trail that had been quietly writing the truth for years. And in the courtroom ahead, those pages would speak far louder than anyone's memory ever could. The courtroom did not feel dramatic. It felt controlled, quiet, almost clinical. Every sound, paper shuffling chair movement, the low hum of ventilation, seemed carefully restrained, as if even the building itself understood that emotion would not decide the outcome. Facts would. Daniel Brooks adjusted his tie once before standing. Across the aisle, Rebecca Collins did the same. Ryan Mitchell sat rigidly beside her. For the first time since this entire situation began, he was no longer speaking for himself. He was being spoken for. Olivia sat behind him, arms folded tightly, eyes scanning the room as though searching for an escape route that did not exist. Paige Mitchell remained still, not tense, not relaxed, simply present. The narrator understood something important about her posture. She was not here to win an argument. She was here to confirm a record. Judge Eleanor Whitaker entered. All movement stopped. All conversation ended. The courtroom rose. When she sat, the air seemed to settle into a different rhythm. "Proceed," she said. Daniel stood first. "Your Honor, this matter concerns declaratory relief regarding real property ownership, wrongful exclusion, and preservation of evidence." He paused briefly. "We will demonstrate through certified records, electronic logs, and independent witness testimony that Miss Paige Mitchell is the sole legal owner of the property in question." Ryan shifted in his seat. Rebecca stood next. "Your Honor, we do not dispute the authenticity of the property records." A small pause followed. Ryan looked at her sharply. Rebecca continued. "We are here to address the defendant's understanding of ownership versus contribution." The phrasing was careful, deliberate, but already the tone had shifted. Daniel called his first witness, Marcus Hale. The digital evidence specialist took the stand calmly. He explained metadata verification, chain of custody, security log authentication. He displayed a timeline of electronic access changes. Date, time, user ID. Each modification appeared in sequence. "Who initiated the removal of Miss Mitchell's access code?" Marcus answered clearly. "Mr. Ryan Mitchell." "Was authorization from Miss Mitchell present?" "No." Rebecca cross-examined. "Are you stating she was denied access?" "I am stating her access was revoked." "Is revocation unusual?" "Not technically. But in this case," Marcus paused briefly, "it was performed while she was not present and without evidence of consent." The courtroom remained silent. Next came the locksmith technician. He described the service request. Standard replacement order. No mention of dispute. No request for verification of ownership. Daniel asked only one question. "Who identified himself as the requesting party?" "Mr. Ryan Mitchell." Rebecca asked her own. "Did you verify legal ownership?" "No." "Is that standard practice?" "No." The witness stepped down. No drama, only procedure. Then came Mrs. Harper. She walked slowly to the stand, nervous but steady. She described what she saw from her porch. Locksmith van, moving trucks, furniture removal, Ryan speaking with workers, Olivia inside the house. Daniel asked gently, "Did anything appear forced?" "No." "Did anyone object at the time?" "No." Rebecca stood. "Did Mr. Mitchell appear distressed?" Mrs. Harper hesitated. "No." "He seemed confident." That word lingered, confident. The narrator understood its weight. Confidence is not evidence of correctness, only perception. Daniel then introduced financial records. Bank statements appeared on the screen. Transaction after transaction. Locksmith, moving company, furniture purchases, renovation payments, each stamped with digital confirmation, each linked to Ryan's account, each occurring within hours of Paige leaving town. Daniel spoke calmly. "Mr. Mitchell personally authorized all expenditures related to the property during the relevant period." Rebecca did not dispute the transactions. She instead focused on interpretation. "Your Honor, financial contribution does not establish legal ownership." Judge Whitaker nodded slightly. "Noted." Then came the moment Daniel had been preparing for. The recorded deeds. Certified copies were projected onto the screen. County seal visible. Recording number verified. Legal description displayed in full. Daniel spoke clearly. "Miss Paige Mitchell is listed as the sole grantee." Ryan leaned forward immediately. "That's not right." Rebecca placed a hand lightly on his arm. "Don't." He lowered his voice. "But I paid for..." Rebecca interrupted quietly. "This is not the time." Daniel continued. "Mr. Mitchell's name does not appear on the deed as an owner." He allowed a pause. Only one sentence followed. It appears as spouse not title holder. That distinction landed heavily, not emotionally, legally. Rebecca stood for redirect. Your Honor, we do not dispute title registration. She turned slightly toward Ryan. We are addressing the defendant's belief that financial investment equates to ownership rights. Judge Whitaker looked directly at Ryan. Do you understand the difference between ownership and contribution? Ryan hesitated. I contributed to the house. The judge waited. That is not my question. Silence stretched. Ryan finally answered. No. The courtroom did not react outwardly, but something shifted anyway. Daniel then submitted electronic security logs. Every entry time-stamped, every deletion recorded, every authorization change documented. The judge reviewed the summary silently. These logs confirm restricted access was removed while Miss Mitchell was not present. Yes, Your Honor. Rebecca did not challenge them. Instead, she focused on legal interpretation. Your Honor, we acknowledge system changes occurred. But we maintain they do not alter ownership rights. The judge turned a page, then another. Finally, she spoke. I want clarity on one issue. Both attorneys stood. Who was the titled owner at the time of exclusion? Daniel answered immediately. Miss Paige Mitchell. Rebecca did not object. Ryan looked down. For the first time, he did not speak. Then came Paige. She did not rush. She did not hesitate. She took the stand quietly. Daniel asked only one question. Did you authorize Mr. Mitchell to remove your access to the property? No. Did you consent to being excluded? No. Did you ever transfer ownership rights? No. Her voice remained steady, not emotional, not defensive, simply factual. Rebecca approached for cross-examination. Miss Mitchell, you contributed to household expenses. Yes. You participated in mortgage payments? Yes. Did you present yourself as co-owner? I presented myself as spouse. Rebecca paused. No further questions. Ryan watched her. He realized something he had not fully understood until that moment. Paige was not arguing. She was confirming. Every answer aligned perfectly with every document. No contradiction existed, not even a small one. After a short recess, Judge Whitaker returned. She reviewed the exhibits once more, then spoke. Ownership of real property is determined by recorded title, unless legally modified. She looked toward Ryan. Do you have any document transferring ownership from Miss Mitchell to yourself? Ryan's throat tightened. No. Do you have any written agreement granting you ownership rights? No. Do you have any legal instrument contradicting the recorded deed? Ryan hesitated, then answered honestly, no. The silence that followed was absolute. The judge continued. Mr. Mitchell changing locks on a property does not establish ownership. Financial contribution does not establish title. She turned a page. Access does not equal legal possession. Ryan sat motionless. The words were not angry, not accusatory, simply final in tone. Daniel gave a slight nod to Paige. Not celebration, acknowledgement. Rebecca closed her folder slowly. She understood the direction of the case. Even Ryan, sitting quietly now, seemed to understand something fundamental had already shifted beyond his control. Judge Whitaker delivered her interim ruling. The court recognizes Miss Paige Mitchell as the lawful titled owner of the property. A pause. Temporary exclusion of the titled owner is not supported by any legal authorization presented. Another pause. Further proceedings will determine damages and property recovery procedures. She struck the gavel once, not loudly, not dramatically, but decisively. Ryan did not speak. He did not look at Olivia. He did not look at Paige. For the first time since the locks were changed, there was nothing left to argue. Only what had already been recorded years earlier in a set of documents he had never fully read. Across the room, Paige remained composed. No smile, no reaction, only quiet understanding that the system had done exactly what it was designed to do. It had ignored emotion and followed the paper trail. The courtroom felt different the next morning. Not because the building had changed, but because something inside it had already been decided. The air no longer carried tension. It carried conclusion. Judge Whitaker reviewed her notes before speaking, her voice steady, controlled, and free of hesitation. Based on the evidence presented in the record, the court makes the following findings. Ryan Mitchell sat motionless. Rebecca Collins beside him no longer searched for arguments. She had already found what there was to find, and accepted it. Paige Mitchell remained still, hands folded, eyes focused forward, not on Ryan, not on Olivia, only on the record being finalized. The court finds Judge Whitaker continued that the real property located at the address in question is solely titled in the name of Miss Paige Mitchell. A pause. No evidence has been presented to transfer ownership rights to Mr. Ryan Mitchell. Ryan exhaled slowly, as if the sentence had weight. Not emotional weight, legal weight. The kind that does not disappear after a conversation. Rebecca stood briefly. Your Honor, we do not contest the recorded title. Her tone was measured, controlled. But something in it had softened since the previous day. We are requesting consideration regarding equitable contribution and marital expenditures. The judge nodded once, noted, then turned another page. Daniel Brooks rose next. Your Honor, we are requesting enforcement of property rights, restoration of exclusive access, and damages for wrongful exclusion. He paused. No further argument required beyond the established record. The simplicity of his statement made the case feel heavier, not lighter, because nothing remained to interpret, only to enforce. Judge Whitaker looked toward Ryan. Mr. Mitchell. Ryan straightened slightly. Yes, Your Honor. Do you dispute that Miss Mitchell was denied access to her property? A long silence followed. Ryan's fingers tightened together. I believed it was my home too. The judge did not react to belief. She only recorded facts. That was not the question. Ryan swallowed. No, he answered quietly. I do not dispute that she was denied access. Rebecca closed her eyes briefly, not in frustration, in recognition. That answer alone had closed several doors in the legal argument, doors Ryan had unknowingly left open. Judge Whitaker continued. Do you dispute that you authorized removal of her belongings from the property? Ryan hesitated. I instructed movers to pack items. Do you dispute placement of those items on the exterior grounds? A pause. No. The judge wrote something. Then came the final question. Do you have any legal authority granting you exclusive control over the property at the time of exclusion? Ryan's mouth opened slightly, closed again. He looked toward Rebecca. She did not rescue him, not because she would not, because she could not. Finally, he answered. No. The courtroom remained silent for several seconds after that word. No objections, no corrections, no clarifications, just absence of defense. Judge Whitaker leaned back slightly. When individuals share a residence in marriage, emotional or financial contribution does not alter recorded title unless legally modified. She turned to Paige. In this case, no such modification exists. A pause. Therefore, the court finds that Mr. Ryan Mitchell lacked legal authority to exclude Miss Paige Mitchell from the property. The phrase settled into the room slowly, lacked legal authority. Not anger, not accusation, just absence of right. Rebecca finally stood. "Your Honor, we acknowledge the court's interpretation of title." She glanced briefly at Ryan. A fraction of something unreadable passed across her face. "We will comply with all orders. No further resistance, no appeal announced, only acceptance." Ryan shifted slightly in his seat. For days he had believed this moment would feel like misunderstanding being corrected. Instead, it felt like understanding arriving too late. He finally looked at Paige. She did not look back, not out of contempt, but because there was nothing left to confirm. Everything had already been confirmed in documents long before this room existed. Judge Whitaker continued, "The court orders immediate restoration of full access to the property for Miss Paige Mitchell." She turned another page. "Mr. Mitchell shall vacate the premises pending final financial and property distribution determinations." A pause. "Law enforcement shall assist if necessary." The words were procedural, but their effect was absolute. Olivia Carter shifted in her seat behind Ryan. For the first time since entering the courtroom, she looked uncertain. Not angry, not defiant, uncertain. Because the reality she had stepped into no longer matched the one she believed she was building. She leaned forward slightly. "Ryan?" He did not answer. Daniel spoke quietly to Paige. "No celebration," he said. She nodded. "I didn't expect any." He watched her for a moment. "You're not surprised?" Paige answered simply. "I've known the documents for years." A pause. "Today just confirmed them." Judge Whitaker delivered the final interim directive. "The court encourages counsel to pursue resolution regarding damages and property return without unnecessary delay." Then she closed the file. "This matter is adjourned for the day." Gavel struck once. Final for now, but not final in consequence. Outside the courtroom, the hallway felt brighter. Not emotionally, structurally, like something heavy had been removed from the air. Reporters were absent, no cameras, only quiet footsteps and the rustle of legal folders. Ryan stood near the wall for several seconds after everyone else began to move. Rebecca approached him. "We need to talk about next steps." He nodded slowly. "Yeah." But his voice lacked direction. Not denial, not resistance, just recalibration. Olivia appeared beside him. "Are you okay?" Ryan looked at her as if the question required a different version of himself than the one standing there. "I don't know." It was the first honest sentence he had spoken since the locks were changed. Across the hall, Paige signed a procedural document Daniel handed her. Return of property access acknowledgement. She signed without hesitation, no pause, no emotion in the movement, only completion. Daniel observed her carefully. "You're handling this differently than most clients," Paige asked without looking up. "How do most clients handle it emotionally?" She nodded slightly. "I don't have to argue with facts." A pause. I only had to wait for them to be read. That evening, Ryan returned to the house. Or what had been the house. Now it looked unfamiliar in a way he could not fully explain. Not because anything had changed physically, but because its meaning had changed legally. He stood outside for a long moment before entering. Olivia followed silently. Inside, everything remained as before. Furniture, lighting, arrangement. But nothing felt anchored anymore. A knock came at the door less than an hour later. A sheriff's deputy. Mr. Mitchell Ryan stepped forward. "Yes, I'm here to ensure compliance with court order regarding access restoration." Ryan nodded slowly. "Understood. No resistance, no argument, only confirmation." As he stepped back inside, Ryan noticed something for the first time. The house had never been taken from him. He had never owned it in the way he assumed. He had only been living inside a structure whose legal foundation he had never bothered to read. And now, that foundation had spoken, quietly, through documents, through records, through a system that never required belief, only proof. Across the city, Paige sat in her office late that night. Daniel had already left. Her notebook lay open in front of her. She added one final line for the day. Court confirmed what records already showed. She closed it. And for the first time since that afternoon she had stood outside her own locked door, she exhaled without tension. Not relief, not triumph, just closure. Because nothing in her life had changed today. The truth had simply been acknowledged. The days after the court ruling did not feel like victory. They felt like correction. A system quietly aligning reality with something that had already been written years earlier on paper no one had taken seriously enough. Paige Mitchell did not return to the house immediately. Not because she was uncertain, but because Daniel Brooks advised patience. During enforcement procedures, let the order be executed cleanly, he said. No emotional friction, no unnecessary contact. Paige simply nodded. She had never needed emotional closure to recognize legal closure. The difference mattered more to everyone else than it did to her. Ryan Mitchell, however, experienced the days differently. For him, time no longer moved in a straight line. It folded in on itself. Every room in the house now reminded him of something he had misunderstood. The kitchen no longer felt like a shared space. The living room no longer felt like his. Even the smallest objects seemed to carry a different weight. Not emotional, legal. Olivia moved through the house more quietly than before. She no longer spoke about renovations or future plans. The confidence that once filled her voice had thinned into uncertainty. On the third morning after the ruling, a formal notice arrived. Property access reinstatement completed. Court order executed. Sheriff Department confirmation attached. Ryan read it twice, then placed it on the counter without comment. Olivia looked at it. So, she can come back any time. Ryan nodded slowly. Yes. A pause. But she already owns it. The sentence felt different now, not theoretical, not debatable, final. That afternoon, Daniel accompanied Paige to the property for the first time since the lockout. There was no confrontation scheduled, no police presence beyond standard enforcement standby, no lawyers speaking over each other, only procedure. When Paige stepped out of the car, she paused briefly at the curb, not because she hesitated, but because she was observing. The house looked unchanged, yet everything about it felt structurally different. The narrator understood why. Ownership does not always change appearance. It changes meaning. The front door opened. Ryan stood there. He did not block the entrance. He did not argue. He simply stepped aside. There was something in his expression that no longer resembled confidence, not guilt, not anger, recognition. Paige looked at him once. Not long, not emotional, just enough to acknowledge presence. Then she walked inside. Daniel followed quietly behind. A deputy remained outside at a distance. No one spoke for several seconds. The silence inside the house felt heavier than any confrontation. Paige moved slowly through the hallway. The photographs were gone. Some furniture rearranged, some replaced. But the structure itself remained familiar, not because it belonged to Ryan, but because she had helped build the financial foundation that made it possible. Olivia stood near the kitchen. She did not greet Paige. Paige did not acknowledge her, not out of disrespect, but because the legal issue had already defined roles clearly enough that personal interaction was unnecessary. Daniel spoke calmly. We'll need access to retrieve remaining personal property. Ryan nodded. Of course. His voice lacked resistance, not because he agreed emotionally, but because disagreement no longer had legal function. Paige walked into the office upstairs. The room was quieter than she remembered. The filing cabinet remained intact. She opened it. Inside, most of the documents were still there. Some had been moved, none had been destroyed. She reviewed them briefly, then closed the drawer again. She did not take anything immediately, not because she was sentimental, but because retrieval had become procedural, not urgent. Downstairs, Daniel reviewed the logistics with Ryan. Furniture division will be handled through counsel. Ryan nodded. Property access remains exclusive to Miss Mitchell. Another nod. Financial separation will proceed according to court schedule. Ryan said nothing. He simply listened. For the first time, there was no attempt to reinterpret. Only acceptance of process. At one point, Olivia quietly stepped outside. She stood on the porch for several minutes. No phone call, no confrontation. When she finally spoke, it was to no one in particular. I thought this was already mine. Her voice was not angry. It was confused, as if she had arrived in a story that began long before she entered it. No one answered her. Inside, Paige signed a temporary access inventory sheet Daniel handed her. Each item listed, each location noted, each retrieval planned. She signed line by line. No hesitation, no commentary. When she finished, Daniel looked at her briefly. "You're handling this better than most would," Paige replied without looking up. "I'm not handling emotion. I'm handling documentation." Daniel almost smiled. That explains everything. Later that evening, as Paige prepared to leave, Ryan stood near the doorway again. This time, he did not try to speak first. He waited. Finally, Paige paused. Their eyes met briefly. There was no hostility, no reconciliation attempt, just distance that had become final in a way that courtrooms rarely fully capture. Ryan spoke quietly. "I didn't understand." Paige answered simply, "I know. No anger, no forgiveness, just acknowledgement." Then she walked past him. Outside, Daniel closed the car door for her. "You'll still need to finalize property division," he said. "Yes, but legally you're already secure." Paige nodded. "I was secure before this started." Daniel glanced at her. "You mean the deeds?" "Yes." A pause, and everything built on top of them. That night, Ryan sat alone in the living room. Olivia had already left earlier in silence, carrying a suitcase that felt heavier than clothing. The house was quiet in a way that no longer felt like ownership, only occupancy. Ryan looked around slowly. Every object now belonged to a structure he no longer understood, not because it had changed, but because his understanding of it had been incomplete from the beginning. Across town, Paige placed a final set of documents into a secure folder. Daniel had emailed confirmation of legal restoration. She read it once, then closed her laptop. She did not feel victorious. She did not feel loss either. What she felt was something far quieter. Completion of a misunderstanding she had never needed to argue about, only to wait out. Because in the end, the law had not taken anything from Ryan Mitchell. It had only clarified what he never fully noticed. That ownership is not created by presence, not by contribution, not by assumption, but by record. And the record had never changed. The final hearing was scheduled on a quiet Thursday morning, but nothing about it carried the weight of a beginning. It felt like the last page of a document that had already been read in full. Ryan Mitchell arrived early. Not because he wanted to, because he could not bring himself to be late. Olivia did not accompany him. She had already left his life in a way that required no formal explanation. There had been no argument, only a single sentence the night before. "This isn't my story anymore." And then she was gone. Paige Mitchell arrived shortly after walking beside Daniel Brooks. She carried only a slim folder, not because there was nothing left to present, but because everything important had already been submitted. What remained now was procedure. The confirmation of what had already been established in records, logs, deeds, and certified filings. The narrator understood something important about this stage of the story. Final hearings rarely reveal new truths. They only confirm existing ones. Judge Whitaker entered. The courtroom rose. When she sat, the silence returned instantly. "Counsel," she said, "we are here for final determination regarding property division damages and enforcement of prior orders." Daniel stood first. "Your Honor, the plaintiff requests final affirmation of sole ownership compensation for wrongful exclusion and reimbursement of legal costs." Rebecca Collins rose next. "Your Honor, the defendant does not contest the court's prior ruling regarding title ownership." A pause. "However, we request consideration of equitable financial contribution during the marriage." The judge nodded once. "Noted." Then she turned her attention forward. There was no witness testimony this time. No exhibits projected onto screens. No timelines reconstructed. Only summary. Only resolution. Judge Whitaker spoke evenly. "The court has reviewed all submissions, including recorded deeds, financial documentation, electronic access logs, witness statements, and sworn testimony." She paused briefly. "The court finds no evidence contradicting the recorded ownership of Miss Paige Mitchell." Ryan sat still. He had heard these words before, but repetition did not soften them. "The court further finds," she continued, "that Mr. Ryan Mitchell's actions resulted in the wrongful exclusion of the legal property owner." A pause, resulting in temporary deprivation of access and use. Ryan looked down. Not in shame, in recognition. Because now even denial felt unnecessary. Daniel remained standing. "Your Honor, we also request confirmation that all electronic access privileges remain restored exclusively under the owner's authority." Judge Whitaker nodded. "That is affirmed." She turned slightly. "Any objections?" Rebecca stood. "No, Your Honor." Her voice was measured, professional, but quieter than before. The case had already reached its limit. Judge Whitaker closed the file in front of her. "In matters of property law, clarity is determined by recorded title, not assumption." She looked directly at Ryan. "Mr. Mitchell, do you understand the court's final ruling?" Ryan hesitated, not because he disagreed, but because understanding carried a different weight than belief. "Yes," he said finally. The gavel came down, not loud, not dramatic. Final, case closed. No one moved immediately. The courtroom remained still for several seconds after the sound faded. Then chairs shifted, folders closed. People began to stand. But the emotional space of the room had already changed. Not toward victory, toward closure. Outside the courtroom, sunlight filled the hallway. No reporters waited. No cameras captured reactions. Only footsteps echoed softly against polished floors. Daniel walked beside Paige in silence for a moment before speaking. "It's done." Paige nodded. "Yes, you handled this exactly as you should have." She looked ahead. "I didn't handle it. I documented it." Daniel smiled faintly. "That's why it worked." Ryan exited later. He did not look for Paige. There was no confrontation left to have. Rebecca walked beside him for a few steps. "I'll send final paperwork for settlement division." He nodded. "Okay." She hesitated. You understand this wasn't about you losing the house. Ryan looked at her. Then what was it about Rebecca chose her words carefully? It was about never having had legal control in the first place. He did not respond, because there was nothing left to argue against that sentence. Only time to absorb it. Later that evening, Paige returned briefly to the property. Not as a visitor, but as an owner confirming completion of process. Daniel waited in the car while she walked through each room alone. The house was quiet, not empty, just no longer disputed. She checked nothing emotionally, only structurally. Locks, systems, documents. Everything aligned with court orders. Everything matched records she had maintained for years. In the kitchen, she paused briefly, not because of memory, but because of realization. So much of what had happened here had never been visible in the moment. Only afterward, through documentation, had the structure of truth become clear. Ryan did not return that night. He stayed elsewhere, sitting in a space that no longer required legal interpretation, only personal reflection. But even that felt incomplete, because reflection requires certainty, and certainty had been replaced, not with confusion, but with correction. Across town, Paige placed the final signed acknowledgement into Daniel's file. He closed the folder. That's everything. She nodded. Yes. Daniel looked at her for a moment. What will you do now? Paige considered the question briefly. I'll continue working. And the properties, I'll manage them. A pause. And Ryan? She answered without emotion. He's no longer part of the structure that matters. Daniel understood, not as dismissal, but as completion. That night, Ryan sat alone in a rented apartment. No furniture felt familiar. No sound belonged to him. He stared at a blank wall for a long time, not thinking about revenge, not thinking about anger, only replaying one realization that had finally become unavoidable. He had never truly understood the documents, not because they were hidden, but because he never thought they mattered more than his assumptions. Paige, in contrast, stood at her office window late that same night. The city moved below in quiet rhythm. She did not replay the past. She did not imagine alternate outcomes. She simply closed her notebook one final time. On the last page, she had written only a single line earlier that day. The record always spoke louder than belief. She closed it, and for the first time since Ryan changed the locks, she felt something settle. Not triumph, not anger, just alignment. Between truth and recognition of truth. The narrator leaves the story here not because everything is perfect, but because everything has been recorded. And in matters like this, recorded truth is final, in a way emotion never can be. A lock can be changed in minutes. A belief can be held for years. But a deed once recorded does not care how long it took someone to read it. It only cares that eventually someone did.